recorded and live streamed. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Daughtry.
Present.
Thank you. Mayor Frizzell is absent. Mayor Marine.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Mead. Doesn't look like he's here. Councilmember Merrill.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Nearing.
I'm here, thank you.
Thank you. Labor Representative Norton. Okay. Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Roberts.
I'm here.
Thank you. Councilmember Schweddy.
Present.
Thank you. Chair, we have a quorum of board members. For our board alternates, we have Councilmember Gallagher in attendance in the room, and that concludes roll.
Okay, thank you. Ready for public comments? Each speaker has 3 minutes to provide comments. In room, the chair calls on those who signed up to speak at the podium, and remote chair calls on those to speak on Zoom. Is there anyone present that would like to make public comments? Seeing none, we will move on to those on remote that might want to have comments. Seeing none, public comment session is closed. Moving on, Chief Executive's report. You're welcome, Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brief report today. We're here today to present the proposed 2025 budget, and we're excited to do so. So we'll be hearing about that in great detail from Mary and the budget team. Also, we are going to present an overview of how we are approaching the development of our sustainability action plan, sustainability program, and that will include engaging with the board early next year on a sustainability policy. So we're going to give you an overview of how that work is coming together and what you can expect over the next few months as we bring it to a head. Couple of items to note of a timely nature, just continuing to keep you up to speed on what's happening in the aftermath of implementing the new network. We're continuing to see strong customer response to the new ridership, to the new network in terms of ridership growth on our local routes and on the SWIFT system. We are also seeing some disruptions on the Sound Transit side with light rail reliability, and that's becoming a little bit of a concern. You may have read about that in the paper recently. There have been some issues down in the U District between Northgate and the University District. And at this point, it appears that there is a pattern there. We are in regular touch with Sound Transit. They have engaged a consultant to come in and look comprehensively at all of their systems. They're seeing issues in the traction power system and the overhead pantograph with some of the vehicles, and they've had some communication system outages. So they are working very hard to get to the bottom of that. And our operations, customer experience, and communications folks are coordinating in real time. So we are aware of that, and we will stay on top of it and keep you posted as developments unfold there. We've heard a little bit about it from some of our customers. It's pretty clear from what we're hearing from Sound Transit that they're getting a lot of feedback from their customers, both from King County and Snohomish County. So, you know, there's issues. They're maintaining over 90% service reliability, but that last 10 is certainly causing some attention. So we'll keep you posted. In happier news, delighted to report that our first battery electric bus has been deployed in revenue service. So congratulations to the ZE team and Roland and Jim and the operations group. Mike, vehicle maintenance, a lot of work getting that vehicle ready and getting it out on the road to serve passengers. Right now it's serving on a collection of routes around Edmonds and Mukilteo, the 130, the 103, the 102, and my personal favorite, the 117. So you may see it out there. And if you do, give them a wave. So we'll be collecting data as we go, and over the course of the next several months, we'll deploy that vehicle throughout our network. The hydrogen bus is fueled, and it is on the precipice of being ready to get out onto the road. We've got hydrogen on site, and we're just putting it through the paces and getting ready most likely next month to get it out there with its battery-powered cousin. We also are excited to announce we've got an opening date for the next 3 ZIP service areas in Arlington, Darrington, and Lake Stevens. We are targeting December 17th. When the staff is working very closely right now to develop a formal announcement of that and a communications campaign to make sure we're publicizing that across North County. So more to come on that, but circle your calendars for now. There will be some activities that we'll be planning and some visits to those 3 cities ahead of that to promote the service and celebrate its inception. And lastly, we've reached agreement with our labor partners over a couple of the key classifications over at Transdev for the contracted services transition. We've reached agreement with IAM on transitioning journey mechanics over to community transit and how that will go. And we've reached agreement with ATU on a similar process for transitioning coach operators over. We've scheduled hiring fairs, and we've got an approach to laddering seniority that is acceptable to the unions. So we're making progress on that. We've still got some other classifications to work through, but we've got good momentum at this point and working well with our labor partners to make that happen. So that concludes my report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Ildenfritz? Seeing none, we'll hand it back to you again for the 2025 proposed budget.
Great. Well, I think Mary's going to join us and Sarah as well, or Mary, or both. Excellent. It takes a village to present a budget, especially one as comprehensive as this. So I'll just kick this off. I think Rachel's got a PowerPoint up and do a little bit of framing for what the budget parameters are overall, and then Mary will walk through the details. And we'll have plenty of time for questions, should you have them. We'll have a little bit of a process overview of where we go with this from here. Today also marks the kickoff of our public comment period on the proposed budget, so the public will have opportunities to engage virtually and also when the board considers the budget and holds a public hearing at the November board meeting. So just to sort of give you an overview with a table setter of how things have gone in 2024, I think everybody on the board is aware that a lot happened in 2024. Gives us a really solid foundation for moving into the next year. Of course, we opened the Swift line, the Swift Orange line. We implemented the network restructure. Next slide, please, Rachel. And we've been talking about that quite a bit and how that's going. Light rail opened, probably the biggest news for South County in quite a long time on the transit front. We've now got service connected to 3 of those 4 new stations, Linwood, Mount Lake Terrace, and Shoreline. And that includes the Blue Line extension to Shoreline North Station. As mentioned, we'll be introducing ZIP in 3 new markets a month and a half from now. We opened the Hardison Campus Service and Operations Building at the beginning of the year and followed that with completing the expansion of the shop about mid-year and had an opportunity to celebrate both of those events. We launched the Security Operations Center, opened the new ride store, and have moved into expansion of our van pool service and replacement of van pool vehicles, including introducing a pilot project for electric van pool vehicles. Within the Swift system, we're updating signage and TVM throughout the system so that the blue and green line amenities match what we've implemented on the orange line. And we are refreshing park and rides in Snohomish and Lake Stevens. On the financial side, we have established and are now using a long-range financial model to project our revenues and expenses over a 25-year time horizon. So that's going to give us some sustainability or a picture of sustainability on the financial side, and you'll hear more about that later. In terms of system performance, in 2024, we're projecting our ridership increase of 19%, almost 20%. That's 1.4 million more riders than the previous year. And of course, on the staffing front, to deliver all of that, we have met our staffing targets for coach operators, mechanics, and other critical staff categories. So really a lot happened in 2024, and it creates, as I said, a very solid foundation for moving forward into the next calendar year. Next slide, please. Rachel shows you our agency strategy document for 2025. This will look familiar to you. It's the same strategy framework we've been using for the past couple of years. We have a framework of delivering excellent service and building the future to which we target our strategic priorities. Those priorities aren't changing for 2025. They are attracting and retaining customers, strengthening the employee experience, and prioritizing sustainability. We have SMART goals and quantitative targets within each of these three priority areas, and in particular in the attracting and retaining customers and strengthening the employee experience. We'll be reporting on those at the end of next year and how we've done. You'll get a flavor of that this year when we do a 2024 report between now and the end of the year. So within there's a lot of work. Some of the highlights that you'll see as you peruse the budget. We're going to be continuing in a growth mode, adding 64,000 more service hours next year. We have 2 service changes, as you know, in March and September, and we'll be listening to our customers and taking a very adaptive approach to how we add service in to meet our customers' needs. I want to make sure everybody keeps it front of mind that the network is new. It was planned a few years back, and we're going to be getting customer feedback and making adjustments as we go to make sure we're doing everything we can to meet our customers' needs. We'll continue working on the BRT network. We have work advancing on the Green Line extension down through Bothell to UW Bothell and environs. We are continuing forward to define the Gold Line project as we go to the north, and we are continuing with those signage, lighting, and CCTV retrofits throughout the SWIFT network. Those are some of the safety improvements we'll see for customers and employees. We're proposing to expand the TSO unit to grow with the expansion of our local network. And as mentioned, we're funding the full operation of 4 service areas for ZIP next year. I mentioned the Sustainability Action Plan. You'll hear more about that in a little bit. And of course, on the facilities side, we'll be advancing into phase 3B, which is the last piece of the shop building over at Hardison Road. And we'll also start planning and design work for phases 7 and 8 associated with our zero emission program. So those are some of the highlights. There's a lot more. Here's a picture, next slide please, of the proportions of our budget: capital, operating, and debt service. Overall, we're proposing $460 million total. Of that, $248 million for operations and $205 million for capital expenses. There's quite a bit of carryover capital funding from this year because many of the projects we're working on, of course, are multi-year projects. So the capital slice looks slightly smaller than last year, but that's because of that carryover, and Mary will detail that for you. So overall, the operating fund is about a 15% increase over 2023, and that reflects that service growth that I talked about a couple of minutes ago. Our reserves are fully funded, so we continue to stay in strong financial condition. We will be, if you take a look at the next slide, drawing on some of our reserves as we begin implementation of some of the zero emission program priorities. So this gives you a profile of our revenue and expenditures over the next 6 years in the transit development plan window. This was a table that was included in the TDP when the board adopted it a couple months ago. Dark blue is capital, light blue is operating, gold or yellow is draws from reserves, and the green line through the middle is our projected revenues. Excuse me. So overall, we are balanced and we are sustainable, and we are looking forward to continuing the great work that we have delivered over the last couple of years with the new network. So with those overall parameters in mind, I'll turn it over to Mary to dive into some of the details and take it away.
Thank you, Rick. So before I dive in, I just wanted to take the time to thank everybody at Community Transit who's worked on the budget. This is a really heavy lift for our senior management staff, our admin staff, as well as our budget team. So thank you all for your hard work on this. I want to point out the budget documents. You probably got a link to an online document, but we also have some physical books available for you if you would like to have a copy. Please feel free to take one after this presentation or during it if you'd like. I also wanted to point out to you the CEO message and the executive summary. So if you're short of time, this is a great place to start. You should be able to get most of the information in these two sections. But if you do want to take a deeper dive into the detail, our department sections contain great information about specific goals, accomplishments, and what everybody is planning on doing in 2025. I wanted to go over some high-level changes to our operating budget in 2025. So we opened the Swift Orange line and did a major network restructure during the current year. In 2025, we'll be seeing the full impact of that network restructure and the Orange line. Our service hours in total are increasing about 116,000 hours. A good portion of that is bus service as well as microtransit. Those are our two big things that are increasing. To support this new service, we have 56 coach operators, 10 mechanics, 12 transit security officers, and about 36 other positions in the operating budget. This budget reflects increased safety for employees and riders, a sustainability action plan, 3 brand new microtransit pilots. Those are fully funded. We expect a 10% bump in ridership and an operating margin despite having relatively flat revenue growth. Some changes to our capital budget. In 2025, we'll have a larger portion of our budget as carried over capital. We're looking to complete some big projects, and then the new capital represents kind of the start of some brand new priorities. The Hardison campus vehicle maintenance, admin, and parts building, that's a mouthful. That's our largest newer project, as well as a handful of other small projects. But the largest portion of our capital budget would be such projects as the acquisition of zero emissions coaches and some of the Swift Gold Line, new project funding, and the wrap up of the Orange Line. You've probably seen this chart before. This shows the revenues that come into community transit and what we do with those revenues. Our operating revenues, first and foremost, fund bus service and microtransit, Vanpool, and DART. So that is our priority. When we're done with that, we fund such things as workers' comp and debt service. And then we make sure we're fully reserved to sustain the ups and downs of the, up and coming economic factors. And then last, we fund our capital program, and we do that with the remaining operating margin and with our capital grants revenue. We expect our 2025 operating revenues to total about $278 million. That's about a 1.8% growth from the current year budget. So we're a little bit flatter than we've been in past years. Sales tax remains about 3/4%, 3/4 of our operating funding, 75%. The next largest source of funding is Sound Transit reimbursements, followed by other income. That's mostly our investment interest. As our reserves may remain at a fairly high level and the interest rates have not yet dropped significantly, we're still earning some pretty decent returns on our investments. And then after that, our next largest sources are grants and fair revenues. Focusing on our largest source of operating revenue, sales tax revenue, we've seen a pretty steady growth since 2020, 2021. This year, it doesn't look like we're going to grow, and this is probably the first time since the recession of 2008, 2009. We're actually going to dip a bit this year from our prior year collections. We've been projecting 198.9 million in sales tax revenue since early spring, and that projection looks like it's going to be pretty darn close. We have that number in the TDP, but our 2025 projection represents a slight modification from the adopted TDP. Over the last few months, some of us have gotten cold feet and we've taken down the projection about 1.5%. So we're looking at just over 4% growth next year. In 2026 to 2029, we're projecting sales tax to continue growing at our historic rate of 4%. That's been our average over the past 30 years approximately, and we often use that as our future projection. The other two revenue sources that are worth mentioning are our fair revenues and our grant revenues from the state. Fair revenues are a real bright spot in our operating revenue budget. We had expected $8 million this year from fairs. However, it looks like we're going to collect closer to 9 million. That is paired with about a 21% increase in our ridership. Then we expect fair revenues to increase another 10% next year to 11 million. Again, we expect a 16% increase in our ridership. One thing I have to mention about fairs, we could have a slight moderation to this 11 million. We have recently adopted some fare changes to our reduced fare riders, and that
Sorry, I didn't know if it seemed like I should take a question while it's,
Mhm.
until we get all the way in. If you can go back one slide, and maybe I wasn't tracking with you. You were saying that you're projecting 2025 budget revenue to be down, but, right?
Sorry, 2024 revenues are down.
Right, but you're expecting 25 to be up,
Correct.
4.2. I guess I would say I would be a little concerned in the shadow of Boeing. There's a strike going on,
Yes.
right, that we don't know, right? And how that's going to affect not just the income and the spending here, but that ripple effect that it has on the restaurants and on and on. So I would just, that was my only thing that caught my eye.
Mhm.
Is seeing a spike there in the year that we don't know the effect that would have. That was the only
Mhm.
comment I had. So,
Well,
thank
we
you.
are cautious about that. We reserve the ability to bring forth a budget amendment if that does happen. So again, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that this year is a correction to consumer spending that went pretty wild during the pandemic. Now we're starting to see some moderation in the spending. Part of it relates to interest rates. Nobody's remodeling their kitchen because mortgage rates are pretty high these days. We're also seeing people spending down their savings. So hoping it's a correction, and we're also hopeful that the Boeing strike does indeed end soon.
Mary, maybe you could say a few words about how you calculated the 4.2, because the recommendation we got was for something more aggressive, right?
That's correct. So we use the Puget Sound Economic Forecasters projections. We look at the retail sales tax for our county. They're projecting a 5.7% increase in 2025 over 2024. I actually used their 2024 decrease of 0.7% to get the 198.9 million estimate. That looks like it's going to be pretty spot on. The increase, however, for 2025 was 5.7%. Got cold feet, we took it down about 1.5%. In retrospect, it probably would have been defensible to take it down a little bit more.
I have a question if we move on to the state grant revenue, we're talking about that. Are those grants in hand or are those anticipated grants? And it looks like one-time money being used for operating expenses. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, so we've estimated that our state grant revenue might come in at about 50% of what we budgeted for the current year. So two of the largest state grants that we have, the Transit Support Grant and the Special Needs Operating Grant, have some connection to the Climate Commitment Act. We have some uncertainty surrounding what will happen with the Climate Commitment Act. The general feeling is that if that act does get repealed in a few weeks here, that the state will replace at least a portion of the existing grant funding. We're coming up to a new biennium, so we are estimating that we will get approximately 50% of what we were awarded in the current biennium. That's also an uncertainty. We recognize that, and as with the sales tax estimates, there is a possibility we could bring forth a budget amendment in the event that revenues don't materialize to the extent that we would like them to.
So at some point in the presentation, are you going to talk a little bit more about planning around the repeal of the Climate Commitment Act, if that should happen?
We could do that, yes. So
I'm sorry.
Well, we could do it now. It's,
Well,
mhm.
it's a relevant topic. So this budget assumes essentially 50% of the grant revenue we would otherwise expect to get under the Climate Commitment Act. And that's based on consultations we've had with legislators and their expressed intent to respond if the repeal occurs. If the repeal is not approved, if the measure fails, then this assumption here is low by a factor of 2, basically. And so we will know the answer to that question before the board is considering.
Can anybody hear me?
Budget. And we should be able to craft a budget amendment that responds to the outcome either way at the time you're considering action on the budget.
thank you.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh my God, finally. I've been doing this for 25 minutes. Hello?
Yeah, we can
Yes.
hear you. We're just walking through the proposed budget.
Yeah, I realize that. I can hear you finally. I'm so sorry about this, but actually it's not my fault. Continue. This is Lance.
Yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. Lance.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you. I don't know what happened here.
Schweider.
Okay, just a quick question on the grants. Does that include the money we get for fare free for the kids?
Yeah, so the Transit Support Grant was awarded because we agreed to adopt a free fare policy for our youth. That would be the Transit Support Grant.
Yeah, but if it fails,
Would
if
we
the
con-
climate thing fails, do we lose that or does we still get it?
We don't know the answer
okay.
100%. We're estimating that the state would backfill with some of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Moving on to service hours and ridership projections. Looking at the left side of the graph, we include 2009 as a benchmark. So back in our history, pre-recession, our highest ridership count ever was 11.4 million, and our highest number of service hours was 671,000. So this really shows where we've come and where we're going. In the current year, we expect 611,000 service hours. That's up, I want to say, that's up considerably from 2023. We're looking at another big jump in 2025 as we see the full impact of those network changes that happened in September, as well as a full year of the Orange Line. So the 739,000 service hours for 2025 consists of a big increase in bus service of about 64,000 hours and an increase in microtransit of 45,000 hours. We're looking at 35,000 hours this year for Zip Alderwood, moving to about 80,000 next year. And then we're also seeing a bump in Vanpool hours. I believe it's about 7,000 Vanpool hours in 2025. So really good news. We're looking at a 21% increase in ridership this year. So 1.5 million new riders in 2024, and then another 1.4 million new riders in 2025. That's about a 16% increase. And then in 2026, that's when we hit the highest level of service from both a service hour and a ridership perspective. So really good news. Service hours are what make up the foundation for our operating budget. So at this point, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Sarah so she can talk about expenses, staffing, and capital. And then I get to talk about my favorite part of the budget, which is the reserves and cash portion.
Right. So total 2025 general fund expenditures are budgeted at 279.4 million. That's down about 15% from 328.4 million in the 2024 budget. This includes both operating and non-operating expenses. We spend general fund money on 3 different categories. We have direct department expenses, transfers to capital, reserves, and other expenses, which includes our workers' comp. So while total outlays from the general fund are decreasing, department expenses do increase commensurate with service expansion. In 2025, we see the full year impact of both the Orange Line and the 2024 network changes. Department expenses in total are increasing by about 11% in 2025. The transfers to capitals, reserves, and other category includes funding for projects and reserves and for workers' comp and debt service. The main decrease here is in the funding for capital projects and reserves. Our workers' comp and debt service remains consistent with 2024 levels. We'll be taking a closer look at the 2025 new projects later, but they're going to be funded entirely out of the operating margin. Transfers to capital are therefore modest and are primarily funding existing projects having to do with our our facilities master plan and SWIFT. We are maintaining our existing reserves for 2025. Reserves are set aside for purposes such as vehicle and infrastructure replacement, as well as zero emissions, sustainability, and expansion. Finally, the other expenses category includes the cost pools and insurance. These decrease overall as we're not carrying as much contingency, but the insurance rates are going up slightly for 2025. Right, so this is an expanded version of the department expense bars that we saw on the previous chart. It was the first set of bars. This shows where the increases are incurring in the department expenses. Salaries, wages, and benefits are increasing in the general fund by 8.6 million, or about 9%. This is a combination of staffing increases as well as increases in benefit costs. Costs for purchase transportation are increasing as well. This includes DART, microtransit, and other contracted transportation costs. DART costs are increasing about 7% due to anticipated growth in ridership volumes. Microtransit as a regular service is now budgeted at 5.4 million and includes funding for additional service areas. And as Rick mentioned earlier, we've begun discussions with one of our commuter services contractors to bring some of those services in-house. The budget because of the timing of when we did it, doesn't address this. Right, services have a net increase of 14% overall. This is mainly in the categories of contract maintenance, software leases, intergovernmental services, and a few other categories. We do have a decrease this year in advertising as our recruiting challenges are easing up, and we've finished out some of our larger campaigns from 2024 related to the network changes and the Swift opening. Fuel is another big driver here. The fuel budget is increasing along with service. More service means more miles driven and more fuel. We have to keep a close eye on those prices. In 2025, we're budgeting diesel fuel a little bit lower than we had in previous years. We're going down to $4 a gallon from $4.25. Dart fuel and other gasoline for internal use is budgeted at $4.40 a gallon. And then the van pool fuel, which isn't on the state contract, is a little higher at $6 a gallon. We've also retained our 5.5 million fuel reserve in case those prices fluctuate. And finally, the budget for parts and supplies will increase by about 30% or about 2.5 million. We expect an increase in the more expensive parts that we're using as we're operating more service and fixing more buses. All right, staffing overall is increasing in 2025 as well, and that's largely tied to the service increases. Most of the new positions are for coach operators, mechanics, transit security officers, and other maintenance personnel. For those of you interested in seeing exactly where those job titles are going up, you can look at pages 64 and 65 in the budget book. We measure employees in full-time equivalent units, FTEs, and categorize them using the FTA's national database categories. They divide employees into two main groups, operating and capital, and then subdivide the operating group into vehicle maintenance, facilities maintenance, operations, and general admin. In total, we have budgeted 193.5 FTE, but as you can see in the chart, we're including 142.8 in those four major groups that the NTD calls operating. Over time, we try to keep an 80-20 ratio of how many people we have in the operations, facilities maintenance, and vehicle maintenance to how many we have in general admin. Just ensures that we're hiring everything proportionally. And as you can see up there, we are staying right on target for 2025 with our ratio. Right, shifting over to capital. This chart shows the breakdown of the $205.6 million capital program by new and carryover capital. This also includes personnel costs for personnel working directly on the capital program. We approve projects for the life cycle, which is why we have significant carryover capital. Our newly proposed projects for 2025 are pretty modest. We've got 51 million that includes the 2025 capital staffing, as well as the FMP 3B project, which is not really a new project, but it's got a new project number and is now supported by FTA formula funds. Right. This chart is just another way to look at the capital program. It divides our projects up by category, which is a little bit, I think, more useful to look at. This shows, again, the project budget for its life cycle. So there might be some things in here that are going to be happening over multiple years. To see a breakdown of which projects are in each category, you can refer to pages 49 and 50 of the executive summary in the budget book. Or you can look at the 6-year capital chart in the most recent TDP. So you can see the largest category here is our zero emissions program. It's the green bar at the bottom. The little black line that you can see is dividing our vehicle costs from other zero emission costs. Vehicles are budgeted at 65.6 million with just a little bit left over for everything else. The blue bar above it for our designated reserves and contingencies also includes some zero emissions reserve and contingency money, which is why that one is a little bit higher than you may be used to seeing in previous years. All right, finally, capital grant revenue for 2025 is budgeted at 59.6 million. Like capital projects, the grants are multi-year and follow the project budgets. At this time, most of the grant revenues funding capital projects are associated with bus purchases, although some of our formula grant is funding the facilities master plan 3B, and we have grant funding for Swift Gold Line design. And with that, I'll put it back to Mary.
Thank you, Sarah. So this is where I get to address the second part of Tom's question. So Chair Merrill had a question about how we address revenue challenges that we might have in some years. So we're starting out with an operating fund cash balance of about 111 million. That cash balance could grow a little this year as we underexpend our current year budget. After we spend our estimated general fund revenue and our current operating budget, we expect a margin of almost $30 million. That plus the funding that we're bringing back from completed capital projects will be spent on the transfers to capital projects, capital staffing, and workers' comp. So we're looking at about a wash between our margin and our funding requests. So we're looking at an ending cash of 111 million also. We're going to spend about what we take in if everything is equal. We've set aside operating reserves of 3 months of operations and then 5.5 million of a fuel reserve. That's about $63 million with $48 million left over for sustainability and expansion. What we mean by sustainability is that allows us to continue operations with no hiccups or blurps in the event that revenues are not quite as strong as we had planned for them to be. It gives us the ability to buy a little time to do some additional service planning and 6-year and longer term modeling in the event that we think that revenues are going to do more than just stay down for a while. So again, we've built in some margin and some capacity so that we can plan for economic downturns and upturns alike. This is a snapshot of our entire cash balance. So we're looking at an estimated ending cash balance next year of $383 million. At the top, you see that operating reserve of 111 million. We also are keeping a reserve balance for vehicle replacements. And by that, I mean bus replacements, DART, Vanpool. If we had microtransit in-house, that would be an addition to that. We also set aside funding for replacing our infrastructure and our technology. We have a considerable investment in those assets, and we like to plan for the replacement and keeping those assets in a state of good repair. Most importantly, or maybe the largest portion of our reserve, is our Facilities and Technology Fund. We have set aside funding, and we were able to do this to a large extent because of the stimulus funding we received during the pandemic, which covered our operations and freed up some of our local funds, our sales tax, for things like a zero emissions reserve, a reserve for service quality, sustainability, and innovation projects. And then we also set aside funding to replace and improve our bus stops. We had $10 million. We've programmed about 4.5 million of that original reserve. And then last, but certainly not least, we have $18 million for facilities projects. That number actually grew. So we didn't fund it with additional funds. We freed up funds from FMP 3B because we were able to put some grant funding toward that project. So now we have 18 million instead of, I think it was 4 or 5 last year. We also keep a reserve for a workers' compensation program. We ensure that we fund that program with at least enough funds to cover the actuarial estimate for future claims. And then we also fund our debt service payment every year. That debt is fully paid off in 2027 for a total of $383 million. Just wanted to circle back to our strategy map. We believe this budget attracts and retains customers or enables us to do so. We're increasing service and ridership, and we're putting in enhancements in our capital program and especially in our safety program to make or to compel our riders to use our services. I'm looking to start on new projects like the Gold Line that will carry us through for years to come for our North End customers as well. Some of those same projects and initiatives also help with employee retention and the employee experience. Really, we're looking for continuing resources to give our employees tools and, wanting them to come and stay working for us. Last, we prioritize sustainability. That is why we've looked to retain reserves, and we're doing quite a planning effort for the future, whether it's new service, new technologies, our service mix, as well as modeling to ensure that we can afford all of those. And then our next slide is just kind of a summary, probably because I just love this graphic. So what comes up after this meeting? We've got a public hearing coming up in 2 weeks that has been advertised in the Herald, and we'll be taking public comments either at the hearing or by email or other means. If after you've read the budget document, you still have questions for us, please feel free to submit them to the budget team. There's a future slide here that gives you some email addresses you can send them to. We will try to address all of your questions thoroughly by finance, performance, and oversight. We'll provide responses to the committee members and then email them to all board members. At that committee, we will also present the budget resolution, and we always have the potential for a budget amendment, although in the current year, it doesn't look like we'll have a year-end budget amendment. At the December board meeting, we target that you will approve the budget resolution, and then we have a requirement by resolution that we have a board approved budget at the end of the year so that we can start 2025 off with a brand new budget. Does anybody have questions?
Mayor Marine?
Not a question, more of a statement. So thank you. I can tell you love what you do. So that is good. People that like numbers. I was happy to see, and I don't know if that has been changed over the years, but instead of the 16.67% of operating in reserves, the 2 months, the 25% for 3 months, much better, considering the fact that we're so dependent on sales tax, which we saw what happens in a recession and where we had to, you really change our service levels. And so does anybody remember whether we were doing less than 25% back then? I think we were, and that may have been why we adjusted yeah. So it's good to see that it should help us get through some, who knows, right? We don't know, hopefully.
Yeah.
No more recession anytime soon, but anyway, thank you.
So I have a comment about sustainability. I understand your definition of sustainability, and that's just about everybody's definition, but something you brought up kind of resonated with me on that, and that is the retention of personnel is actually a big piece of sustainability. And I don't think we put enough emphasis on that. I know that we emphasize that throughout our departments, and I recognize that we have some very long lived employees in community transit, which I'm obviously proud of and love seeing every time. But I think that when you're talking about sustainability, that is a bullet point that needs to be iterated each and every time.
Thank you. Other comments? Feedback for Mary? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Mary. How long does it take you to memorize all those numbers?
Oh my gosh. So I've been talking about this a lot. So the more I'm involved in long-range financial planning, as well as the TDP and a supportive role to Sophie Luthen, and then I present various elements of that data to different groups, I think I know it better and better. I'm maybe not one of the really long-term employees, but I'm coming up on 11 years now, so.
Thank you. Nicely presented.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Chair's report. Did I miss something? Oh, sustainability. Excuse me, we haven't done that one yet. Thank you, Roland. I didn't mean to leave you out.
There we go. So Councilmember Daughtry, this was like the perfect setup. So just hang on to that question. I'm just going to briefly introduce, I wanted to introduce two members of my team here. So Alexa Russo is our program manager for sustainability. And Alexa's been with the agency, I think a little over a year now, joined in 2023. And she came to us with a pretty extensive background in sustainability. And so she's an expert in the field. She's been leading our foundation building program development in this area over the past year. Built a really strong team across the entire organization. It's a matrixed operation that includes virtually every part of the agency, and it's really made some progress. So she's the one really leading the effort at the ground level. And then I think most of you have met also Sam Lushtak, who's on my team. She's the senior director for safety, security, and sustainability. And so this sustainability program is in Sam's portfolio, and she's got overall charge for oversight and guidance of that program. So they're going to be presenting today. And I think just you saw a couple of times in the previous presentation that sustainability is one of those three strategic priorities that's really the focus of the agency for several years. And we're just really excited that the work that the team has done over the past year, it's been a lot of that initial building and staffing the program, and then establishing this common understanding of what do we mean when we talk about sustainability at community transit. And so that's been a lot of the work over the past year. And we're excited today to begin to share some of that in an early table setting manner. We're going to have a brief presentation today just to get the board oriented to what is community transit's version of sustainability, and it really complies with industry best practices, you'll see. And then we'll be back again, as Rick indicated in his earlier comments, in December and then in January with more details about the actual action plan that's been developed and how the board can endorse and put their stamp of approval behind that. So that's really just the kind of the setup and introduction here. Alexa's going to be leading the presentation today, so take it away, Alexa.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me, everybody. So as Roland mentioned, sustainability is one of the three strategic priorities, as you've seen, as we've put up this slide a couple of times now. And so my role within that is to set the strategy and then advance sustainability across the agency, and to act as that subject matter expert to inform on different initiatives that we're trying to advance across the agency. And so one of the goals within the operations team within the strategy of 2025 is to adopt and start executing our sustainability action plan for 2025 through 2030. And so there are many agency-wide goals that you'll see on the screen that are found within that sustainability action plan, including the different ZE program, zero emissions program milestones that we're looking to complete within that 5-year period, as well as strengthening financial stewardship, as Mary talked about, and many other initiatives that we've been working on this year and then we'll continue working on in 2025. So to define sustainability, the strategic priority sets the vision that we will be environmentally, financially, and organizationally sustainable over time. And we define sustainability as the processes and methods used to protect the environment, foster economic stewardship, and provide for the well-being of others. And this fits within the 3 pillars of sustainability, which are people, planet, and prosperity. And like a 3-legged stool, all of these are meant to be in balance and considered in all decisions that we make equally. And within the people pillar, we're thinking about making our people happy, healthy, and wanting to come to work because that's good for our business. And prosperity, thinking about leaving some for later and making sound financial decisions so that we can support people and planet within the financial decisions and putting our money where we want to invest. And then planet, of course, is conserving and preserving the resources naturally that we have on this earth, including water and energy and things like that. So to talk a little bit more about the sustainability program, I'll start with the me side on the left. So what does the sustainability program do? So I work to educate and engage and advance sustainability across the agency, define sustainability, figure out how sustainability fits into people's work at the agency so that it goes across our business and is interwoven into the fabric of the agency. And we have that 3 pillars focus, as you saw in that Venn diagram, throughout the entire process. And so this is setting the strategy and the framework for how we do sustainability and facilitating conversations cross-functionally to ensure that people understand how it connects to their work. This is based on not just my expertise, but also industry expertise and best practices, as well as just sustainability expertise and best practices. I also communicate with teams about what we're doing and where we're going with sustainability and trying to get everybody thinking toward the same common goal of our sustainability action plan and our vision for sustainability. And this is not a siloed approach, and we are really trying to make sure people understand that this impacts the entire agency and that it will take the entire agency to make this happen together as a collective, which is where we get into the we part of this Venn diagram. So over the past year, we've been working on building a 5-year strategic plan, the Sustainability Action Plan, which outlines goals for achieving sustainability within the period of 2025 through 2030. And those goals fit within those 3 pillars of sustainability that you saw. And we will be talking a little bit later about the roadmap that will outline some tactics and key performance indicators to hit those goals. And the intent is to have an annual report and transparency, not just to the agency and the board, but also to our public, because that's one of the key tenets of sustainability. And this was developed through engaging all of the different departments across the agency and gathering stakeholder feedback to make sure that we co-create this plan together so that we all have a shared direction and intent moving forward. And there are departmental ownership levels of the different goals and tactics that we've identified in the plan. Okay, so every house needs a strong foundation, and our foundation is our commitment through the Sustainability Action Plan. And with that, the ultimate goal is to support the strategic priorities of the agency. But to do this, we have to focus on all 3 pillars of sustainability: people, planet, and prosperity. And there are many, many different initiatives that are happening within those 3 pillars across the agency, including the long-range staffing plan, the long-range financial plan, the zero emissions program, our DEI program. And those are all initiatives that fit within that framework and that help build the foundation and the support network to make those strategic priorities function. And so the Sustainability Action Plan is a commitment to supporting the key goals and initiatives that we've outlined for the agency. And so each year we will determine different tactics that we want to take based on the climate of the agency at that time, and that makes sense so that we can move forward our goals and support our goals for the upcoming year with associated key performance indicators, which we'll talk about next. Okay, so this is an example of what our annual report and roadmap could look like. So on the left, you see our sustainability report. So there would be two different parts to this annual report. One is the report, which is more of a look back of what did we achieve and what progress did we make on the goals and tactics that we set out for that year. And then the roadmap, part 2, is more of a look ahead to say, here are the tactics that we commit to working on this year, or that we continue from last year, because some things will be a multi-year project. And so this is intended to be an annual report and an annual look ahead at where we're going and planning ahead for future, let's say 2027, 2028. What do we need to be doing and thinking about before those commitments are made? And so that year's tactics will be outlined in the roadmap, and key performance indicators for each of the tactics will also be outlined as we commit in the roadmap. I'm just going to take a pause as people are looking. So individually, we are one drop. Together, we are an ocean. And it will take, as I said, the entire agency to make this sustainability thing happen. It's not just a me thing. It's an entire agency-wide thing. And so we need to take collective change and a collective approach to make this happen. And so we have been working to set that foundation and set the agency up sustainably to support our strategic priority of sustainability. And so as you can see, we all have a part of this puzzle. And so the board of directors, more of that financial and programmatic oversight, and then adoption of the policy and resolution for sustainability. Rick, as CEO, has more of an adoption of the plans and is the accountable executive. ELT, Executive Leadership Team, has been providing resource support and recommendations to Rick to move this forward and make sure that we are setting that strategy. The Sustainability Leadership Team, that is a group that has been instrumental in the development of the Sustainability Action Plan. And this group was assigned by ELT to act as a representative of their departments and divisions. And they act as the leaders and representatives of this plan and helped to not only write the plan, but also to figure out what other people or things need to be thought about before we commit to these goals and these tactics within the plan. The Sustainability Corner is an awesome group of volunteers that we also have at the agency, and they are just jazzed about sustainability and want to inspire and educate employees about how they can incorporate sustainability not only into their life, but into their work as well. And then, of course, as we've said, collective impact. All staff will have some connection to this Sustainability Action Plan. And so everyone will need to find a way and connect to the sustainability plan in their work. So next steps. Over the past year, we have been gathering input from many, many stakeholders across the agency. And the goal of that was to co-create and integrate all of that feedback and thoughts into the Sustainability Action Plan. And you'll see SAP, because Sustainability Action Plan is a mouthful after a while. So if you see SAP on this, that means Sustainability Action Plan. We also drafted the Sustainability Action Plan and synthesized all that awesome feedback for inclusion in what we've created. We are now at the board workshop, just giving a brief sustainability introduction and overview. And next, I will be going to ELT to present the full finalized sustainability action plan for review. In December, I'm planning to go to committee to give an overview of the sustainability action plan and then have a request for the resolution adoption and review of a sustainability resolution. In January, we are tracking to come to full board for that resolution adoption request and that sustainability action plan overview, and then hoping to have the formal adoption of the sustainability action plan by Rick. And then from there, we start the implementation phase of the sustainability action plan and start executing some of those goals and tactics that we've outlined. And so that will be from 2025 through 2030. And there will be annual reports that come out to track our progress and talk about where we've been and where we're going. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to some questions and hearing your thoughts.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Alexa. So how do we track, right, benchmarks and deliverables? Because we know where we've been, we may know where we're going, and hopefully know when we get there, if we ever get there. So what does that look like? How do we know we're on the path?
Yeah, so we've set out tentative key performance indicators for each of the tactics that we've outlined. For example, let's talk about waste diversion. So we've set out a tactic to first measure what our waste diversion rate currently is. We don't currently have a way to do that. So that would be step one. And that's a tactic with many different sub-tactics underneath, right? And so that's a incomplete. Figure out a plan, right? And then after that, we say, okay, we've set that measure of, let's say we currently have a 40% waste diversion rate. We want to then get to X% diversion rate. And so we would set that as a new target. And that would then be, let's say 2026, what we're working toward. And there's a bunch of some sub-tactics under there to say, okay, we need to implement a new waste stream at all agency facilities, or we need to look at our waste in terms of paper or whatever it may be. Those sub-tactics would then be tracked, and then we would be working toward that new goal of X% diversion rate. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean, and looking at waste, that definitely is something I think you can measure and track, but some of it seems less able to track, and so sometimes it's hard to know. Do we feel better? But are we getting there? Or we just feel like we're doing something, so we feel better about that. But so it's nice to have at least some way of knowing, right? Are we still on the right path?
Yes, and I think for some of those more mushy concepts, the sustainability leadership team, every time we commit to a new tactic, are going to revisit what can we do to measure these things. And whether it be a survey, or we've had an internal culture of sustainability goal, and we need to measure that by a sustainability survey. That's one concept that we've come up with to measure. But there could be other things that the team has come up with through stakeholder feedback and continuously engaging our teams and having these dialogues. This is not we created the plan, stop conversation, just do it. No, we need to continuously be having this because it's an evolving process, and the ways that we measure these things also evolve over time.
Yeah, and because you need buy-in, right?
Yes.
But you're charting new territory. It's exciting, but it's also charting new territory.
Yes.
So good luck.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Looking forward to it.
Okay, seeing none, let's move on. Oh,
That's it.
that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will say, as an old software guy, SAP is a software company. I have to change my frame of reference. Okay. Now we will move on to the chair's report. As I shared As I shared in an earlier meeting that we had, I received a letter from the King County Executive Constantine to identify a member of our Board of Directors to participate in a regional fair program. And I'm grateful that Mayor Frizzell has agreed to fill that position for us. So she will be getting that shortly. Second thing I want to talk about is that I did attend the new Police Academy rollout. The Board of Directors was well attended by the Board of Directors and also by CT staff. And Councilmember Schweddy will say more on that since that took place in Arlington. And then finally, the next regular board meeting is scheduled for November 7th, 2024 at 3 p.m. Questions for me on that? Okay. Since I brought up Councilmember Schweddy, you get to go first.
Yeah, that was quite an event on Tuesday. I didn't expect it to be what it was. I mean, I wasn't expecting several hundred people. And I certainly wasn't expecting the governor. And there were so many, and when I say elected officials, I'm talking senators. In fact, Leas was there and had been here that morning. And lots of Congress people. Almost every single mayor in the county was there, and so many, I would probably tell you that almost every police chief in the state was there. I know there were some that came over from Eastern Washington, but there were so many people in uniform, and it was quite an event. And what they're doing is they're taking the OUPS facility and redoing it, and it's a huge, huge place, and it's already nice. And they've already started moving on that. And it will most definitely, I'm sure you've read about it in the paper already, but the difference it's going to make is it's going to put more police on the ground. And that is what has hurt us so badly. We hired a couple years ago for the first time in Arlington since 2006, police officers. And the amount of time it took at least a year and a half to get them hired and through training, and sometimes even longer. And that's all across the state. And so hopefully, and Kim was saying they already know that they've got 2 people that are going to be going into that academy, but it was definitely an event. I know I told people, and you guys might not appreciate this, but there were so many people there that I had met somewhere along the line. I don't think I've ever been to an event that I was hugged so many times by everybody. It was a thrilling event and great for Arlington. So thank you, everybody who came.
Okay. Moving around in the room, Councilmember Daughtry.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Community Transit ahead of time for participating in tomorrow's event that Lake Stevens Chamber's putting on. It's basically a job fair, and Community Transit, thank you for your donation to the cause as a sponsor. And also, I understand you're coming to spend the day with us, so that's going to be impressive. As we were going through the budgets here, we're all going through budgets in our cities and all looking at the same kinds of things that are going on. What I look forward to about this budget is the next awards that we get, Mary. So we get another plaque on the wall in there. And looking at your proposed budget, a booklet, I think you're going to get that award again also.
Mayor Marine.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I was not able to make that event because I had already had something scheduled. I'll give you your hug later. But it sounds good. They're in an old UPS, so they will clearly be able to deliver, which is good. And, you know, the best part about that, not only they can get in quicker, but the fact that we would have to send our officers and put them up for, you know, the entire time. Yeah, that's a big cost. And if they can be in their area and they can go home at night, and it makes our costs better as well. Also, just want to say, I think it's the first board meeting since we were at the APTA conference, and just what a pleasure it was that the staff from CT that were there, that we had time to spend together. We walked a lot. There was a lot of walking involved. And it really, I would say you know, I don't know if Chair Merrill or Mayor Roberts, but really the most I got of it were those mobile tours and going in and being able to see. We call it OCTA, Orange County Transit Authority. They're not allowed to, they have to call it OCTA. But anyway, so OCTA, and going and seeing their hydrogen facility, and they're really kind of one of the largest in the area, and they're doubling down and getting, what was it, 40 more buses. But what was interesting is to see, and I know staff was there and took all that in as well, but how much hydrogen you lose along the transfers. And I mean, if you lost that much fuel, like diesel or anything, you're like, what? But anyway, so a lot of great things. It's good to see somebody else go first so that we can take a look at it and kind of learn, right? You never want to be the first one out of the foxhole. So, but it was very interesting. A lot of good information. Even the electric buses they had and how they started literally with like car plug-ins. It was crazy. So good that somebody else went first.
Well, we'll go on right to the folks on remote. I'm going to go from left to right. So that means Mayor Roberts.
Well, thank you, Chair. I just would echo Mayor Marine's comments about having staff along the Apticon conference. I think that one of the things that I noticed is maybe one of the more rewarding thing is the conversations, not only with staff, but with the other folks that you meet in the hallway and just getting around. I have to say that the chair and I had a little trouble keeping up with the rest of the folks, just walking and stuff, but that was a very enjoyable time. And I too attended the meeting yesterday, and I was struck by something that Sheriff Johnson said, that this will allow women, particularly who want to train to be a police officer, who has kids, to go home at night, and that is, I think, a real plus, and it's a real win-win. And so, yeah, that was a great meeting yesterday, and that's all I have. Thank you for the presentation. This is my second time hearing the budget presentation. I've still got a long way to go to get my head around it all, but thank you for the presentation. It was excellent.
I'm going to interject one comment on that. Mayor Roberts said we had trouble keeping up. We were trying to give lessons to Mayor Marine on how to mosey, and they didn't take.
Yeah.
Moving on. Mayor Naring.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I was at the event that Jen referred to. Great event. Great to see that facility opened up, and really nice budget presentation as usual. So thank you for that. Good to see the financial house in order. Reserves as always strong. Good capital situation. I would share Mayor Marine's concern a little bit on the sales tax. It's a little bit not just Boeing, but I don't know. It just feels like maybe the good times are coming to a little bit less good times in that area. But I do like the stat that you pointed out of, I believe, I don't know how many years you put, that 4% number has seemed to be a good steady baseline. So I guess if we average it out over the time, we're probably in pretty good stead. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Councilmember Peterson, comments? Okay, let's move. Rep. Norton, do you have some comments that you'd like to make?
Yes, Tom, I do have, I'd like to extend a compliment to Mayor Marine. Tom, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you fine. Thank you.
Oh, good. Joe, my compliment is you ask some really great questions, Joe, and I wanted to compliment you on that.
Thank you, Lance.
You're welcome. All right. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Gallagher.
Just dittos on kudos for wonderful budget presentation and the event not making up.
Yeah, thank you. Did we catch everyone? I believe we did. Okay, seeing no more on that, do not have an executive session. Any other business that you would like to bring up? Anyone? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming today.
Thank you.